The Lord of the Rings is honestly probably one of the greatest film franchises ever made. It is up there with some of the very best. But how good is the swordsmanship from it if we were to approach it and analyze it from a historical perspective, specifically the main swordsman of the franchise, Aragorn. Now, Aragorn, he is supposed to be a master swordsman, so is his fighting style, the techniques he is using in combat, does that match the level of skill that he is supposed to have? Well, that is the very thing we will be analyzing in this video, specifically the combat that we see in The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. That's what we're doing. Let's get started.
Shadowverse.
Just before we get started with today's video, we should mention one really important caveat. Most of the fight scenes in all of The Lord of the Rings are not one-on-one duels where swordsmanship might really shine through. There's a whole bunch of other things like wearing armor. So this one may be a little bit more negative on the swordsmanship aspect, but there is that context to add.
Here is the interesting thing though, Tyranth. There is one moveset that Aragorn does in this that has some very strong historical validity to it. So we're going to build up to that and explain why that is so good. But there is that important caveat to mention that I think I need to talk a little bit more about. And oh, I noticed that's a very nice sword you got there, Tyranth.
It is. I take it in stride.
Mine's bigger.
Shut up.
So here is the thing. When it comes to battlefield combat, I can actually accept that it gets a bit more brutal, less elegant, and you could actually resort to just brutish, full power swings to kill your opponent. If you're surrounded by lots of enemies, I can definitely see you're just doing a wide swing here, and a wide swing there, and a big swing. And there's actually not a lot of finesse, dare I say, technique, apart from perhaps having an understanding of timing and distance and just getting that strike in between the opponent's own attacks. And in that sense, you're probably not going to see strong stances with very precise kind of movements. You're going to see kind of like the combat that we see Aragorn doing at the Battle of Amon Hen. But before we dive into that, I do want to let you know that there is a way that you can get a really cool sword rack from Temu, who is a sponsor of this video, for as little as $1, and I'm not kidding. Hear me out. Yes, Temu is back, and we have a new sword we will be reviewing in an upcoming video because we've been blown away by the quality that you can get out of some of this. Is the previous Temu sword we've reviewed, and we have a new one. And Temu wants us to let you know right now that if you are a new user and you download the Temu app through our link, or you scan this QR code, you can get a $100 coupon code that's valid for 24 hours if you put in this coupon code in the search description of the Temu app, right? And if you're a new user specifically, you can get access to this sword rack. I purchased this thing to find out if it was any good, and genuinely, it's actually quite a lot better than random sword racks I've purchased in the past. It even has a felt inlay for the swords to rest on. Or every other sword rack I've purchased don't even come with that, all right? And so that's really good to not scuff the scabbard when you're putting it in the rack like that. And if you're a new user and you use this coupon code or scan the QR code, you can get this rack, no joke, for as little as $1 US, which is insane. That's a special deal if you're a new user. Link in the description, and use our discount code in the search bar to get that coupon or this really crazy deal that they're offering. And keep an eye out for when we test out this bad boy. See if we can get another banger at a crazy price, but we'll have to see how tough it is. That video will be coming soon, so we look forward to bringing it to you. See, the question of is it historical is a little bit more complex than just comparing it to the kind of treatises and things that we can learn from historical sources with how long swords can be fought with. Because there is another side to historical combat, and it's the reality that not everyone was a master. I do think Aragorn should be a master. But even if he is a master, it goes back to what I was saying before, that in a battle where your intent is to just kill that opponent, and then you see one over there, and so you're going to do a hit, right? And you're resetting. you can kind of get away with some of the attacks that Aragorn does. And the question of, is that historical? Well, in the sense that if a random person picked up a sword and tried to fight their guts out, and this is in the past, they picked up a sword, tried to fight their guts out as much as they could, they probably would be fighting very similar to the way Aragorn is, especially on Weathertop. You see, in Weathertop, that's one of the first scenes Viggo Mortensen filmed, the actor who played Aragorn, and he didn't have much training in swordsmanship, so he just fought his guts out on camera. And there is actually some very poor technique on display where he is really flailing about, and it's not necessarily a larger battlefield. He even engages some of the ring wraiths almost one-on-one, and there is a movement where he's hitting, and it's a lot harder to do with a heavy sword, by the way, and this is not well weighted, it's a wall hanger, but he hits, and I need a lighter sword, this is, ooh. But he basically hits, and it's just this kind of moveset that you see him take on the ring wraith, and he's trying to push it back. Now look, is it the worst thing? No. But is he actually trying to hit the opponent? He's aiming high and just doing this, mainly aiming for the ring wraith's sword. The logic behind that could be fluster the opponent to push him back, because Aragorn is just trying to send them off of, Weathertop to protect the hobbits. And so with that tactic in mind, maybe. And then we have the larger context that it is very likely that people in the past did fight like this, even though it might not be the most efficient or best way, or the way that is taught or represented in certain historical sources that teach medieval swordsmanship. The issue is that I think Aragorn should be a bit more trained and precise in his movements in this engagement specifically, and he does actually show that in one of the later exchanges. All right, just to redeem myself, Tyranth, could you explain to them how heavy this thing is? It's a wall hanger, right?
This isn't a properly battle-made sword. This is made out of stainless steel. All of the official replicas are. They are not proper. They're not proper weapons.
That's a club, overweight, top heavy.
Yeah.
And so try and do that, Aragorn, like how hard is it? You feel it on the wrist, right?
Yeah, like, that's terrible.
That's awful. Night and day, Tyranth. Night and day. You can one-hand this thing. Okay, so the move that I'm talking about, right, is, guess what?
What?
You get to be the orc.
Great. What do you want me to do?
So Aragorn actually attacks the orc with some moves that you can say have a lot more historical validity than the other kind of wild battle combat has been doing. So what Aragorn is doing here is actually varying his attack height to try and draw out the opponent's blade to create an opening. So at one moment he attacks high and then he attacks low. And what he ends up doing, right, the orc ends up trying to defend with one arm, and he tries to block and stretches out his arm to his side. So Aragorn basically tries to hit, and then he draws it out, and he gets the orc to stretch it out further, and then he comes down and takes the arm like so. That is not a terrible move if your opponent falls for it, which the Uruk-hai did. But what we can see him doing with his hands, right, is he is not overswinging. These are tight exchanges, right, where he's hitting, and he's keeping his arms a bit elevated. Did you see that? Where it's, yes, and when you start to keep your arms elevated, you're protecting your upper body better, which is much better historical swordsmanship in form. Why? Legs. If your opponent attacks for the legs and you've got a high guard, what you do, if you go for my legs, you can easily move that out of the way because Tyranth's legs are actually further away from me than his head, because my arms are attached to my upper body.
And if you have a higher guard and I go for your head, you're already there.
Exactly. As we look at the historical swordsmanship behind Aragorn's fighting style, there's another thing that Aragorn does that I've been wanting to test for a while. And it's when the orc pulls out Aragorn's dagger and throws it at him, and Aragorn blocks it out of the air. Look, from what I've heard, Viggo Mortensen actually did that in that proper, filming. I want to see how difficult that is, how viable it is to block and stop a thrown dagger out of the air with a sword. And that is exactly what this week's exclusive video is going to be. We're going to be testing that in real life, safely, of course, to see how easy it is to knock a thrown dagger out of the air. And to get access to that exclusive video, all you need to do is become a supporter as little as $1 a month, and that is through Patreon, Subscribe Style, or here on channel memberships. You get access to that video and all the other top tier, high quality, full length Shadowversity videos. And I can't stress enough that it is only thanks to our supporters we are still doing this. If you like this video and want to help ensure that you're able to get more videos like this in the future, it is only thanks to our supporters. So if you would like to help support this content and get all the extra content, $1 a month, that's just $12 a year, and it saves us, guys. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the video. Here's an example of what Aragorn could have done that is founded on a bit more functional, realistic swordsmanship, and it's based on fooling the opponent to make a mistake, okay? And so, for instance, take a look at it. So that strike down, right, was me purposely aiming wide to draw out his sword. It doesn't even get to touch it because I'm already coming in that feint to reverse edge cut. If I am able to chop off the orc's arm like this, I could have also gone right down into the orc's head like this and ended the fight right there.
Yes.
So the technique is sound, his target is not. The orc was dead open, completely vulnerable to a kill shot right on his head. Was Aragorn trying to, like, spare his life?
Doubt it.
Yeah. Now, we ultimately know why. And this comes into the discussion of the rule of cool, where sometimes I think it's perfectly fine to push what is realistic a little bit if it doesn't jump the shark, which is an old saying where it goes to mean to go too far, to get into ridiculous territory, right? And I think for most audiences, they saw that arm severing move, oh, awesome, because it is followed up almost without hesitation with a great thrust right through the orc's guts, right there. And we know, what does the orc do? Grab the blade, pull it in, and then tries to kill Aragorn with his bad breath. Fortunately, Aragorn has a tough nose, and that doesn't kill him, and Aragorn pulls the sword out and chops off the orc's head, and the angle, the way the camera is positioned, the power, and seeing the head get lopped off was awesome. So with that in mind, that the ultimate finishing move had actually 3 successive kind of cool blows, which is like, wow, followed up with another wow, then finalized with a big wow, which is arm taking off wow, stabbed through the gut wow, exchange with the orc pulling it in, finished it off with a decapitation, bang, bang, bang. What could have then worked is to justify Aragorn going for the arm instead of their head. The orc, when his arm is outstretched, he could have been trying to block his head. Maybe he picked up his dagger. I know he threw it before. He also lost his shield. He picks up anything. Even just trying to block it with your arm, a sword strike can sometimes get stuck in the arm. So Aragorn thinking, will my strike, get caught in his arm, or taking off his hand here, slow down the strike and not kill him. His other arm is fully exposed, so he goes for that. That stuns the orc, lets Aragorn finish with that huge thrust. A small little change like that, I think, would have justified him taking the arm instead of killing the orc right then and there. Just a small little change, while also acknowledging the fight overall is cinematic, it's dynamic, it's fast, it has power. That's not to say it couldn't be improved with a little bit more historical swordsmanship, as we saw in that exchange that led up to him defeating the orc, because that was my favourite part of nearly all the fighting Aragorn does, because it looked better because it was more realistic. And that's the kind of thing that we like to encourage here on Shadowversity. Now, if you want my more detailed thoughts on the balance between the rule of cool and realism, I have a dedicated video on that, talking about it in depth, and you can check it out right there. I do think it points out some important things, and I hope to see you there. So until that time, farewell.